Hey, we are live. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining me on another adventure of streaming with Ryan, sculpting and chatting. We got a great stream for you guys today. Continuing work on this creature. It is based on a painting, or actually two different paintings, by a Norwegian fantasy painter from 100 years ago named Theodor Kittelsen. You might recognize the last name. It's the same as my last name, spelled a little bit differently, but it's the same name. But no relation. But it would be super cool if I were related to him, but I'm not, unfortunately. But yeah, he did this painting. Let me see if I can pull up the reference image for you guys. There's this painting called Water Sprite. He did two different versions of it that I'm aware of anyway. And so I'm just kind of taking the best of both of them and mashing it into one. And what I'm eventually going to do is create like a cube of water and get that rendered and kind of put like a kind of a translucent muddy material on it, so it's kind of like semi-transparent, kind of translucent. And so it would look like a resin sculpture, or a sculpture like coated in resin or filled with a cube of resin. So yeah, we're a couple weeks into this project already, and I'm just gonna keep working on this. Got some photo reference of hairless monkeys that I'm gonna use for kind of detailing some of the skin and wrinkles and folds and muscles and stuff from here. So welcome everybody. Super cool to see everybody here, and let's get going with this. All right, let's see who's in the chat here. Salutations from Orlandoville. Are you from Orlando, Florida, Spearchuck? I think I've seen you in here before. Don't always remember the handles people use. Saludos desde Canarias. Mucho gusto verte aquí. ¿Cómo estás? We got Toasted 3D. Hey there. Also, Alex says, hello, don't want to break your process, but could you tell how would you make braided belt with nanomesh? Braided belt. Really quick, I wouldn't use nanomesh for that. I would use geometry. I would use micromesh. It's part of the dynamic subdivision. And then there's actually braided materials in there. So you just get a strip of like a single poly loop, and then you'd either make or use an existing braided micro mesh on that. So that's what I would do. Hey, it's Roberto Achilles de Silva. How's it going? All right, so let me get my photo reference here. I've got another screen here with some photo reference. Search hairless monkey on Google image search if you want to see some of the reference I'm using. Hey, Camille. So how was everybody's weekend? Anybody do anything interesting? Anybody see a new movie that came out called Mad God? It's written, directed, produced by Phil Tippett, legendary visual effects artist and director. Visual effects director on like Return of the Jedi. We're talking Jurassic Park. So like major legend in the visual effects industry. So he has been working on this stop motion animated film mostly stop motion. There's actually some live action as well, but it's just super weird, weird movie. And I don't know if any of you guys have seen any stop motion animation from like Jan Svankmajer or the Brothers Quay, but it's got some of that vibe. It's actually kind of like feels like a feature-length Tool video. It's very dark, very creepy. Definitely not for kids. But it was really cool to see what Phil Tippett was doing, you know, without, you know, being the director of his own creation, rather than being the visual effects director for, you know, somebody else's film. He's got quite the imagination. It's like combining Hieronymus Bosch with H.R. Giger and Beksinski, and just turning that into animation. It's just really wild stuff. Okay, so I'm going to try to get some of this back musculature. Wasn't super happy with how I did my scapulas. I just kind of like sketched in something as a placeholder real quick. So I'm going to kind of redo that. Oh, that's weird. So I keep clicking use posable symmetry. Well, I added a subdivision level, and I clicked the use because when you click use posable symmetry, it works on the current subdivision level and lower. But so if you add a higher subdivision level, you have to like redo use posable symmetry. And I click it, and it doesn't work. This is the first time for me. I might have to just work without symmetry from here on out. Hey, Master 619. Greetings. Hope everything's going okay for you in Russia. That's okay if I break symmetry. You know what? This is the original artwork is pretty sketchy, you know, pretty loose anatomically, and so I'm okay with keeping that looseness going here in my sculpture. I switched to a material that helps me see what's going on a little bit better. Hey, Ruben M. Thanks a lot. Yeah, hopefully it does turn out interesting. uh, Hey, Chuki. Yeah. Glad you like that sugar skull on the door. I made that for a freelance project for a customer, for a client many years ago. And this client made like big styrofoam, like costume skull heads. And so the client gave me one of the styrofoam pieces, and then I painted it myself. Um, yeah, I actually took it on a bike ride the other day. Here in Portland, Oregon, there was a what they call Pedal Palooza. They hold bike rides like throughout the summer, and so I attached it to the front of my bike and put some lights on my bike and had a good time riding around. Let's see, I'm going to try to make the creases and the wrinkles in the skin a little less prominent on the right side because he's kind of like stretching that arm forward more. So I would imagine the skin folds would kind of smooth out a little bit and they'd be more compressed on the left side. So who else here has been playing with the AI art generators like DALL-E 2 or Midjourney? Has anybody been using this? I've been using Midjourney. I think they opened up kind of like a very open beta now. Like it's not like you have to be on a wait list. I think you can just join it. It's really, really impressive. I'm just blown away by what it can do. I mean, there's still limitations. If you want something very specific, Midjourney, it's difficult to really directly tell it like specifically what you want and how you want it. DALL-E 2 is a little better at that, but it is super cool. Like the way it's absorbed composition and color theory and painting styles, image styles is just astonishing. I wouldn't have imagined that AI would be where it is right now just last year, honestly. Hey Shonique, yeah, go ahead and if you want to share a link to an image, just pop it right there in the chat. I've been doing a series of images in Midjourney, imagining what it would look like if a river were flowing through a house. Like if you built a house over a river and incorporated that into the interior architecture. Really fun to imagine what stuff like that would look like. Just things that are kind of ridiculous and would be way too expensive, for me anyway, to do in real life. Get to play around with doing them virtually at least. Oh, well, that's really cool. Yeah, I just clicked your link. Let's see. Let's try to make this bigger so everybody can see. Wow. What were the prompts you used for that? Creepy wall. That's definitely creepy. I'm actually thinking about making a graphic novel using Midjourney. Sort of not for the full illustrations, but to get a lot of the backgrounds and kind of at least the style. It's not very good at creating characters, especially not like a consistent character that you want to see like from different angles and consistently throughout a graphic novel. But as far as like making something that would be like a background and then I could like draw. Actually, probably what I would do is make a character in ZBrush and then rig it in Maya and then just pose it for, you know, different panels of the graphic novel as needed. So I reposed the feet from where I had it last time. I'm going to have to like reposition how the ground fits in with these feet. Good thing it's a really organic, muddy kind of ground here, so it doesn't really have to look any particular way. I can just kind of sink it in around the foot. Yeah, I thought I saw some Beksinski influence in that. That's really cool, man. Thanks for sharing. Hey, Manual Compost, thanks. And Master619, thanks a lot. Yeah, this is the part of the sculpting that's interesting. It's a different phase, you know, getting into some of the smaller anatomical details, some of the more like loose and asymmetrical skin fold stuff. So yeah, it's always fun to jump into this stuff. kind of absorbs my attention though. It makes it hard to chat at the same time because I'm just kind of really focused on some of these details and shapes. So hopefully nobody minds if I go quiet for a minute. Hey, Jace Cover. How's things in Jamaica? I've never been to Jamaica, but I love warm, sunny, tropical places. So hopefully one day I'll get to visit. How did I know it was going to be sunny there? Pretty much everywhere it's going to be hot. Does anybody know Arthur the Weatherman? It's been raining mushrooms. What does that mean? Hey, S9R19. How's it going? Hey, thanks a lot. Yeah, just plugging away at it. Glad everybody's here, hanging out and enjoying it. Oh yeah, I've installed Blender before too. Yeah, I mean there's a lot going on. Definitely a lot going on. I haven't done a whole lot with it. There was a time window when Blender had better retopology tools than Maya, and I was already pretty familiar with Maya, but I needed to get some retopology done, so I went into Blender for that. I even made a course on character modeling for Blender way many years ago. It's Blender has changed a lot since then. That course is probably not the best way to do characters in Blender anymore, but at one point in time, I knew Blender just okay enough, but typically for work, I need to use Maya more regularly, so I haven't really kept up with Blender. So is there something in particular you're planning to do with Blender? So if you go to lynda.com or LinkedIn Learning and search my name or search Blender character modeling tutorial or training, you should be able to find it. But I do warn you, it is a pretty old course. Blender has changed a lot. It's probably not going to be super relevant anymore, to be honest. So what kind of stuff do you want to make? What kind of stuff excites you, S9R19? If that's your real name. It's almost like you're a droid in Star Wars. Is that your Star Wars droid name? Well, so the question is, what do I recommend to get good at making characters and stuff? A lot of stuff goes into it. Having some traditional art background always helps. Practice. Of course, training courses. Gnomon is great. Lynda.com or LinkedIn Learning has some really good stuff that I've made. Yeah, just like getting feedback from people who know what they're doing. It's just kind of a combination of all of the above. And some people get more out of some of those things than other things, but I think it's a great idea to experiment with lots of different sources of training and learning, and then see what works for you. How much time to reach being good at characters 3D stuff? I mean, it's a lifetime. I think it's going to be at least a couple years before you're probably good enough to do it professionally. But it's a lifelong process. You're always getting better and better. Always learning. Well, this creature, I'm going to name him Fred. I guess the name of the original artwork is Water Sprite. Could go with that. You finally learned how to move objects in Blender after a full day of trying to figure it out. Sounds about right. Sounds about right for any 3D software, honestly. They're so complicated. I think with good software design, good UX design, somebody should just be able to jump into it and at least know how to like move around the scene and pick an object or place an object and rotate it and move it and scale it. I think that's like the very basic. If someone opens your 3D software and they can't figure out how to do that intuitively, I think you gotta go back to the drawing board and change some things in your software. That's just me. So the question, how did I become a professional? Well, I did get a degree in traditional illustration, but I just taught myself a lot of the 3D tools. Actually, pretty much everything I learned in 3D I taught myself. But that traditional illustration background was really helpful. But you know what really makes you professional is being devoted to the craft, you know, and persistence, and putting yourself out there, and you know, telling clients what you can do and what you can't do, and being realistic with yourself about what your abilities are, and charging appropriately. So there's a whole almost art and craft to the professional business side of it too. You know, it's easy when you start out to want to be able to, you know, work on the next Star Wars or whatever, but you got to be realistic with yourself of like where your skills actually are. If you tell someone, oh yeah, I can make, you know, this whatever 3D model, and you can't make it, it's not going to work well for your professional career. So you got to build up slowly. You know, you got to take on small projects, learn how to do that before you take on bigger projects. But yeah, I've just built up my career doing freelance. People would notice me on YouTube. People wanted to, people had, like, clients, for example, had projects they wanted to do, and they were like, oh, I'll just learn how to use ZBrush to make my 3D printed figurine or whatever. And then they download ZBrush and they realize how complicated it is. And they're like, oh, crap, this is like way harder than I thought it was going to be. Maybe I'll just hire this guy who has this tutorial on YouTube instead. And you start getting a portfolio of professional work, which makes it easier to get more work, and so on and so forth. Yeah, I have a YouTube channel. Just search my name, Ryan Kittleson, on YouTube. You'll find it. I also have been doing scripting in ZBrush, making my own plugins. And so I'm actually going to share a link with you all. That's a link to my plugin. I've got a lot of cool things in there that make sculpting or doing pretty much anything in ZBrush a lot easier. So today is the last day in July that I'm going to be doing a live stream, starting in August. Well, yeah, I'm not doing one next week, and then starting in August, I'm doing Mondays in, well, the afternoon my time. Of course, it's some other time everywhere else, but it'll be, I think, 1 p.m. my time. That's Pacific time. So it's a few hours later in the day. That's so true what you said about wasting months playing video games. It's definitely something that that can happen. You start getting into a game and you're like, oh, just, you know, a few minutes here and there, and then it turns into, what have I done with my life? Let's see. When I just tried opening Alpha 58 myself, and yeah, I'm not quite sure. I'm using it right now. It's giving a nice smooth effect for me. I'm not quite sure what you mean. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and save this. Definitely don't want to lose everything in a crash. Why is my gizmo so weird? Because it's my own custom gizmo. And it's part of Ryan's Tools, my plugin they have for sale on Gumroad. So if you're interested in it, you can actually get it as part of the Pro version, the $20 version. Gives you my plugin plus some cool extras, extra brushes, some cool materials, like this material, for example, some alphas, all kinds of cool custom stuff I made. And so you can also get like this background. Notice how I've got kind of like a 3D grid background. It helps me keep oriented, especially if I'm starting out a new project, you know, from like a cube or a sphere or something. And it can be hard to tell in ZBrush which direction you're looking at it from, whether it's top, bottom, left, right, front, back. And so with this grid background, it's kind of easy to keep your bearings in 3D. My custom gizmo does not have any extra functions. I just find it easier to grab the different move, rotate, and scale functions with my custom gizmo than with the built-in one. Oh, hey, Zach Lunsford. Cool to see you here. How's things going? If I remember correctly, you went to ECU, right? Could I sell you ZBrush compared to Blender? Yes. I mean, if what you really want to do is sculpting, then ZBrush is definitely the way over Blender. If you want to do a lot of the other stuff, rendering and animation, dynamics, all kinds of that stuff, then you might want to consider Blender instead. You know, if you're just going to do a little bit of sculpting, but mostly like a lot of the other stuff, then yeah, Blender is probably the way to go. Or Maya, or whatever, but you know, a lot of people don't have the budget for Maya necessarily, so Blender's definitely got a lot of user base, that's for sure. So there's always people that can help out and offer suggestions. I haven't used Blender too much over the years, especially not lately, so I don't really know how good it's looking right now, but a lot of people use it, so it can't be too bad. So the sculpting in ZBrush, I mean, there's just a lot more geared towards sculpting in ZBrush because that's what it focuses on. And it's just under the hood, it just handles high poly models better than Blender. It's just more focused on it. You know, you don't have to fight your way through the interface that also includes stuff for animation and rendering and all that stuff if all you want to do is focus on sculpting. So yeah, I remember you, Zach. I remember I went and did a guest lecture at East Carolina University. Met you there. And for people who don't know, I got my illustration degree from East Carolina University. So it's cool to see someone here I know in person. So how is your career taking you, Zach, after graduating from ECU? Curious to hear how that's going. Yeah, definitely. That's cool to hear. I'm glad to hear that you're getting work. And when you were at ECU, Zach, did you were part of the in the 3D program, if I remember correctly? The 3D program had just started when I was in my last year at college, and If there was a 3D program when I started at ECU, I probably would have gone through as that, but they didn't, so I went through traditional illustration instead. But I was using 3D in my traditional illustration assignments all the time, much to the frustration of Joan Mansfield, my illustration instructor, professor. No, I exaggerate. It wasn't too frustrating, but I was doing stuff with 3D Studio Max and 3D printing, and the other students are, just doing charcoal and pencil and pen and ink and stuff like that. I'd come in with a 3D render for my illustration assignment, and Joan Mansfield would be like, "Yeah, I have no idea what you're doing, Ryan, but I guess keep it up because it looks cool." I mean, that's back in 2005, 2006. No, 2004, 2005. Yeah, that time period. It's back when I was in college. I'm so curious to hear how a traditional illustration and art classes now are dealing with all the stuff you can do with the AI generated art like Midjourney. I mean, because I could imagine in a traditional illustration or painting class, right? They would, I would imagine they would say that you're not allowed to use Midjourney to come up with your paintings or your illustrations, because the stuff that's making right now is astonishing. Like Midjourney, you just type in a prompt and in a minute you get an image that if I'd turned that in for an illustration class, I would have got an A plus. Just looks fantastic. How do you teach illustration now when you've got this AI art generator? I don't know if I would want to teach illustration now, because there's like really no good way to make sure that your students aren't just typing in prompts into an AI art generator instead of making it themselves. And what it's doing to the career of illustration. It'd be so tempting, instead of spending all day slaving away at something, you just type it in and pop it out and you're done. I mean, true. If you really want to get something really, really specific, how you want it, you might spend all day typing in prompts, to massage those results. But still, you could get something that looks like a really professional illustrator did it in 1 minute. Just crazy. Oh yeah, the question. That's a good question, Gromik Vol. uh, I think it's, how quickly 2D art generation AI has just popped up so quickly. I mean, there's already 3D. They're more like tech experiments at this point. They're not like really packaged professionally, but things where you just give it a photograph and the AI kind of interprets that photograph into a 3D model, and it'll produce the backside of the model. You give it a picture of a person, and it knows like what the clothes should look like on the backside. It's not perfect. It's pretty messy actually right now, but like considering how rudimentary the 2D art generation AI was just a year ago, and how far that's come, like it's just a few years now before 3D models that look awesome are being generated by an AI in minutes. And yeah, that's really really concerning. Now, what you want to use that model for? For animation or for games. There's some considerations where it kind of takes a human to really direct how that's going to come out. You want it rigged a certain way. It has to be modeled a particular way, but it's really scary to see how fast that's changing and where that's going. We should ban it. Well, I don't know if we can ban it. That would be interesting. That's an interesting solution. Oh yeah, that's interesting, Zach, about the student who used Photoshop filters over paintings. Uh, yeah, that's interesting. I Photoshop and filters have been around, as long as I've been doing digital art, at least professionally, and the filters can be done well and they can be done super tacky. I think if somebody who knows Photoshop and filters can recognize that a digital painting just has a filter slapped on top of it, then that's not, from my opinion, that's a poor, sloppy use of filters and Photoshop. It's just taking the easy way out, and it's just I don't have a lot of respect for it. And I've seen shows in galleries too, where they're just using Photoshop filters, and it's just really crappily done, but people didn't know. They thought there was some like artistic skill going on, and people like selling paintings and making lots of money that way, and And I just don't have a lot of respect for it. But that's just me. When it comes to Midjourney, making art that way, I mean, at least I think if you're honest about like that an AI made that image, and you talk about like the prompts you put into it, that's something. Maybe these people that have galleries and museum, their art, their paintings, their digital paintings, and the solo show or whatever. If they say like, oh, this was just a photo with a Photoshop filter put on top of it, then it's being honest about what it is, I guess, and that's more respectable. But I've seen people like pass it off like it's an original painting, not even a photo, but like it's their original painting, and in like respectable high-end galleries selling for many thousands of dollars, and it just kind of made me sick to my stomach, really. Do I recommend becoming a 3D artist when people, right now, when it might become obsolete? If it's something you love to do and you're passionate about, I think there's going to be a place for it as a career for the foreseeable future. But what that exact place is that's going to exist for the 3D artist is uncertain. If you love it enough and you're passionate about it, and it's like what you would do even if you didn't need to make money, as your creative outlet, I say sure, go ahead and learn it. If your motivation is like making money and having a career, maybe not. I think people who are talented and skilled and smart and motivated are always going to find some way to make a career with this technology. But it's not going to be everybody, unfortunately. Yeah, many jobs can become obsolete. What's so weird is that the parts of art making that Midjourney does best is literally the part that I thought was going to be hardest for AI, like composition, color theory. I mean, and that's what Midjourney excels at, actually. What actually is it's difficult at is doing something like specific and precise. It's still pretty loose as far as how it interprets the prompt. DALL-E 2 is better at that when it comes to like wanting it to do something specific. And then Google is coming out with one called Party with a I, not a Y, and it does. I saw some demo of it, and it can create. If you tell it to have text reflected in a mirror, and the text is like mirrored correctly. I mean, that's just mind blowing that it can figure that out without it being a 3D scene either. It's just the AI just knows how to interpret 2D so well. Yeah, I agree. The Rajap, it's going to create a new baseline. You know, I was talking to a friend who does the same type of work I do the other day, and he was saying that, well, also a musician, and we were talking about how AI music generators also exist, and he was saying that well, if you want to be a real purist about it, you know, making your own music, well, you got to make your own musical instruments. You know, if he plays the drums, you know, he's like, well, how about you know, make your own drum, but you can't just get the drum skins. You got to like raise the sheep and then, you know, butcher them and get the sheep skin and make the drum, and you know, grow the tree to make the wood to make the frame. And you know, at a certain point you got to start from something that you didn't make, which is an interesting point. So you're always, you know, as a creative person, you're always starting with raw materials that you didn't make. And so there's definitely not shame in picking up where somebody left off in some way. I think that in the past it was kind of understood what that starting point was, but now with AI, you know, it might not necessarily be clear. Did you start with a lump of clay? Did you start with a T-posed model? Did you start with an AI generated image? And so I think the art world should hopefully embrace a level of honesty about where someone started with an image or a model, so that you can judge where it ended up appropriately. I think that would be really what would be best. You know, there's the idea that creative people are never truly like 100% originators of their own material. You know, everybody borrows, everybody steals, everybody is like building on the shoulders of the geniuses that came before us, and that's all very true. You know, and it's funny, like 100 years ago, an author writes a book. It could be pretty well expected that everyone else in that culture had access to the same books that that author had access to, or all the other writers had access to the same books for the most part. I mean, nowadays there's such an explosion of media that there's no guarantee that someone's going to grow up having read the same books or watched the same movies. Or saw the same paintings, you know. So now there can be a lot more confusion about where these original ideas come from. Yeah, I agree with that point, Rover Under. It's like I'm actually really happy to see um, creative tools becoming more accessible to average people, because I think that there's an unfortunate elitism in the creative world where if you're an artist, it's easy to think that you're like somehow like more special or better than people who aren't artists. And I disagree with that elitism. I think that everyone deserves to have a way to express their creativity and put their art out there. And sure, not everybody's going to like everything, but that's okay. There's with the 7 billion people on the planet, there's always going to be someone that likes what you make. And hopefully people feel freedom to express themselves and create what they want to create. And I think AI is going to help people do that. And it actually should hopefully remove some of the elitism from it. It's like when it's accessible to everybody, then nobody's special for doing it. Which will make some people unhappy who have their egos wrapped up in it. But overall, I think it's going to be a good thing. Yeah, that's a good point, Rover Under. Also, yeah, I mean, there is a craft that goes into prompting the AI art generators. I never liked the elitism in the art world because you get abstract expressionist painters who painted something that looks like a toddler did it, and then the complaint to that is of course like my 4-year-old could have done that, and then the elitist response to that is like or someone would say, well, I could do that, and then the elitist response is, well, but I actually did it. Did you do it? And my response to that is like, well, the person who got famous in these galleries for doing abstract expressionism, they had the good fortune to be raised wealthy enough to go to, fancy colleges and have connections and meet the right people, and not have to work a low wage job just to get by. They had the good fortune that not everybody has, so that they could make their abstract expressionism. So I don't think that just making art makes someone special or better, because I think everybody should be able to do it. Yeah, I like that idea, Gromikval. It's like that whatever the AI spits out, the individual as an artist can look at it and be like, okay, that's pretty cool, but how can I make it even better? So hopefully that'll happen. All right, have a good one, Zach. Run into you later. Such an endless task making sprinkly skin. It just never ends. That's cool. It's a very like meditative, relaxing thing to do, you know? You just get in the zone and just start making some wrinkles and folds. And you can spend, I mean, if this was like a full, you know, hero character in a movie, I mean, you know I'd be spending weeks, if not months on it. But this is a you know, kind of loose, you know, I'm taking it kind of loosely, just trying to have fun with it, not going to get bogged down, you know, don't have to make anybody happy, don't have to make an art director happy with this, so I'm happy to just kind of keep it loose. The original art is kind of loose as well, so it's all good. This body is currently at about 30 million polys. Oh wow, this is a cool photo I just found. This little baby monkey. That's actually going to come in pretty handy. I'm gonna enjoy getting some of that detail in here. Hey, Sargus, or Sargis. Glad you could join us right here at the very end. Yeah, we're getting pretty close to the end for today. Really thankful for everybody who joined in the chat today. This was a really cool conversation. Art and AI and what it all means. Looking forward to continuing next time. Next time I'll be live is not next week Monday. That day I'm taking off, but I'll be back in August, Mondays, actually, and a few hours later than today. But glad to see everybody here showing up. Putting in the last couple minutes here. All right, still some details I want to work on. Still want to get some of those leaves that are growing on the seagrass or whatever that is. A couple different styles of seaweed and stuff like that. And then, yeah, getting into rendering. So that'll be next time. Thanks a lot for joining, everyone. Have a good